Hey guys, welcome back for another video. We got a good one prepared for you today. What we're going to be doing is we'll be going over every single Week 10 top 25 college football matchup. We'll be breaking down all of the top 25 games, who's going to win each one, who's going to lose, and what we predict the final scores will be. And we'll also touch on the money lines, the spreads, and the over-unders. There's a lot of really good games coming up. The games are becoming more and more meaningful, and teams are also getting deeper into conference play, so the competition is starting to take a step up. But let's start running through these games. We got a lot of good ones. Make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe. If you have any comments about these games or anything else, please drop them below, and I will respond. Every week we go over every single college football game, both the top 25 and the non-top 25 matchups. And we also break down every NFL game as well. If you are a football fan, if you are a sports fan, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can follow along with us. The first top 25 matchup we have is actually one of our Friday night matchups on Fox Sports at 8 p.m. We have the 3-4 San Diego State versus number 15, 6-1 Boise State. Boise State comes into this game major favorites here. They have a 95.1% chance to win this game. 23.5 point favorites. The over-under here is 56.5 points. The big thing here for Boise State is they are still the front runner for the group of 5. If they continue to win these games, they will be the representative for the group of 5 in the final 12 for the playoff. Props to them having a great season so far. They're obviously going to be led by the Heisman frontrunner right now, Ashton Gentry, who's running all over everyone. He's running for about 200 yards every game, lighting things up on the ground. And they have their quarterback, Matson, closing in on 1,500 yards, 13 touchdowns, 2 picks, having a very efficient season. And San Diego State, they have O'Neal closing in on 1,300 yards, 6 touchdowns, 2 picks. For San Diego State, they have a lot of issues scoring the ball, moving the ball down the field. They're only averaging 22.3 points a game, 228.4 passing yards, 126 rushing yards. Boise State, we know they can run the ball. They have a top 10 total offense in the nation. They average 44.3 points per game, 233.3 through the air, 274.9 on the ground. They are going to run all over you, wear you out, averaging over 500 yards a game, almost 300 yards on the ground. That wears down a team so bad. That's why Boise State always dominates the second half. Their defense giving up 25.9 points a game, but they do give up just under 300 passing yards per game. So perhaps San Diego State can try to get their passing offense ready to go. That's easier said than done, especially when San Diego State gives up 160 yards on the ground themselves versus one of the best rushing teams in the country with the best running back in the nation. Right now, Gentry's closing in on 1,400 yards through 7 games. That's 200 yards every game, and he already has 19 touchdowns. They're going to light it up. San Diego State will try to respond with Cooper on the ground. It's not going to be enough. I have Boise State cruising here, winning this one 38-17, so they get a dominant win, and they keep their playoff hopes open. And this next matchup should not be a big noon Saturday game. This should have been a whiteout, should have been a night game. Shame on Fox for doing this. On Fox at 12 p.m., we have number 4 Ohio State at 6-1 versus number 3 Penn State at 7-0. This is number 3 versus number 4, positioning yourself in second place for the Big Ten. The Buckeyes want this. They want that second place. They want a rematch with Oregon. But running through Penn State is going to be easier said than done. Penn State also has their sights on competing with the Ducks. Both teams want to make the playoffs. No matter what here, both teams are probably going to make the playoffs, but the Buckeyes definitely don't want to take their chances losing their second game by Week 10. But the Buckeyes are the favorites here, 61% chance to win this game. 3.5 point favorites. The over-under here is 46.5. This is 2 elite defenses facing off. Obviously, the Buckeyes, they also have a top 15 offense. They're led by Will Howard, closing in on 1,800 yards, 17 touchdowns, 4 picks. Drew Waller for Penn State might not play this game. We don't fully know as of yet. It's still too early. If he doesn't play, that's a massive loss. Backup does have a lot of reps, but obviously Drew Waller, 5-star quarterback, a lot relies on him. He's closing in on 1,700 yards, 12 touchdowns, 4 picks. For the Buckeyes, they're averaging 40.3 points per game. They throw for 290.4. They run for 188. And elite defense giving up 11.9 points a game. It's hard to run on them, too. They're only giving up 91 yards on the ground. The biggest issue for the Buckeyes is their offensive line. They are banged up. They're down 2 guys, and they're having a lot of issues filling those voids. They're not getting time for Will Howard. It's starting to affect the run game also. They're not able to open up those holes, but the Buckeyes do have one of the best 1-2 running back punches in the country. This is 4 of the best running backs playing in this game. They have Howard, they have Junkins, they have Henderson, they have Jeremiah Smith, they have Egbuka. When the offensive line doesn't hold up, slows down the passing game, slows down the running game, both of those things are going to slow down the play action game. It's a massive effect here. Penn State has a top 10 defense. They're going to get after you. They're going to attack that line. They're going to blitz, and then they're going to drop in coverage. They're going to try to confuse Howard, trying to get some turnovers. Penn State, they're averaging 33.3 points a game, so maybe not as great offensively. Still good, but they definitely have the defense to match up with the Buckeyes. They're throwing for 273.1, running for 197, only giving up 14.3 points per game on defense, and they're top 10 in quarterback hurries, top 10 in sacks. That doesn't bode well for a questionable Buckeyes offensive line, and they're also only giving up 92.9 yards on the ground. Both of these teams have great 1-2 running back punches. For Penn State, they have Allen, they have Singleton, they have Warren at wide receiver. I have the Buckeyes winning this one. In the late third, fourth quarter, that's when they pull away. This game is going to be close. Could be a one-possession win. Would not surprise me in any way whatsoever. But I have the Buckeyes winning it 27-17. And our next match is actually a rivalry game on ABC at 12 p.m. 6-2 Duke versus number 5 undefeated 8-0 Miami Hurricanes. You're probably saying, why is this a rivalry game? Well, Miami just fired Manny Diaz. He was the last head coach, and then they hired Mario Cristobal. Manny wants to win this game to prove that it was a mistake to fire him. Mario wants to win it to prove that it was a mistake and they never hired him in the first place. Right now, Miami has a 90.8% chance to win this game. 20-point favorites, that's a pretty big spread there for an in-conference game, and the over-under is 54.5. You do not want to sleep on Duke. This is not the Duke that you might have been familiar with. This team can move the ball. This team has an elite top 20 defense right now, but that's because Manny Diaz is the head coach. He coaches aggressive, physical, non-stop blitzing defenses. Miami's offensive line looked kind of questionable versus Florida State. Ward was sacked 4 to 5 times that game. Can Duke replicate that? Get pressure on Ward. Try to shut down the passing game, force Miami to have to run the ball, but also for Miami, you can run the ball. You have no issue. Ward doesn't have to go for 400 yards every single game. If you shut down the pass game somehow, they are perfectly fine to just line up and run it right down your throat. No issue with that in any way whatsoever. For Duke, they have Malik Murphy, the Texas transfer, closing in on 1,800 yards, 17 touchdowns, 5 picks. Miami has the number 1 passing quarterback in the nation, Cameron Ward, closing in on 2,800 yards, 24 touchdowns, 5 picks, elite quarterback play. Duke averages 26 a game. They're only giving up 18.6 points per game. That could be the difference maker in elite top 20 defense. But Miami, the number 1 offense in the nation, they average 46.8. They throw for 380.4. They run for 194. They can beat you passing the ball. They can beat you running the ball, and still a top 30 defense. A lot of people knock Miami's defense. They're still top 30 in the nation. Out of 134 teams, they're only giving up 21.5 points per game. Only 97 on the ground. They're going to force Duke to have to beat them vertically through the air, but Miami's weakness is actually their secondary. Can Duke do that? They have Murphy. They have Star Thomas closing in on 700, Moore closing in on 500. Miami's loaded. Ward, Martinez, Fletcher, Lyle, Allen, Restrepo, George, Horton, Arroyo, Williams. So many weapons, so many ways they can beat you. I have Miami winning this one 38-17 and continuing to stay undefeated. In our next matchup at 12 p.m. on CBS, 1-6 Air Force versus 21 Army, still undefeated, 7-0. Army has a 94.8% chance to win this game. Pretty big favorites here, 22.5 points spread. The over-under is 41.5. It's going to be a low-scoring game, but probably a game that Army is going to dominate on both sides of the ball. Right now, Air Force, they are led by Busha, closing in on 500 yards, 1 touchdown, 5 picks. 5 picks and 1 touchdown. That lets you know how bad the Air Force passing game is. They're only averaging 15.3 a game. They only throw for 109.9. They do run for just shy of 200, and their defense is giving up 27.4 points a game. But Army's coming in here. A top 15 offense, a top 10 physical defense. They're averaging 40.4 per game. Passing for 100.6, but they run the triple option. They're still the number 1 rushing team in the nation, running for 359.1 yards per game. Triple option sucks up so much time, keeps the ball out of the opposing team's hands. Sometimes they will have the ball for 10 to 12 minutes every single possession, completely sucking up entire quarters, and they're only giving up 12.4 points a game, only 79 on the ground. For Army, they have Daly. He's closing in on 700 yards passing. He's also closing in on 1,000 yards rushing. He's going to be the difference maker here. Still has yet to throw an interception. I have Army cruising this game, winning this one 37-18. And then at 12 p.m., we have a sneaky good SEC game on ESPN. Number 19, Ole Miss 6-2. They actually have the number 1 defense in the nation right now. They are getting after it. They'll be playing Arkansas at 5-3. Ole Miss is fully rested here. They have a 73.9% chance to win this game. 7-point favorites. Over under here is 53.5. Do not sleep on Arkansas. This has been a very competitive team. They can throw the ball. They can run the ball. They're playing really good defense this season. Ole Miss, though, they have those 2 SEC losses. They cannot afford to drop a third. They might not be positioned right now to make the SEC championship. I mean, they could potentially still, but they would need some things to go their way. But things are still in front of them for them to make the playoffs. If they finish the season 10-2 out of the SEC, they will make the playoffs, but they need to win from this point out. There's no room for error right now. They are led by Jackson Dart, who's having one of the best quarterback seasons this season. He's closing in on 2,700 yards, 15 touchdowns, 3 picks. And for Arkansas, they have Green closing in on 2,100 yards, 11 touchdowns, 7 picks. He is also a mobile quarterback. The big thing with him has been turnovers and his health. Can he keep both of those things under control this game? For Ole Miss, they're averaging 39.5 a game, throwing for 364.8, running for 184.1, only giving up 11 points a game, number 1 in the nation. Only 76 yards on the ground. Arkansas loves to run the ball. It's going to be hard to run on Ole Miss. You're going to have to beat them vertically through the air with Green. Vertically through the air could potentially turn into some turnovers, some interceptions. Watch Ole Miss's defense here. For Arkansas, they average 33.3 a game. They throw for 298. They run for 199, and their defense is only giving up 21.8. Ole Miss, number 1 transfer portal class. They have Lane Kiffin. They have a great offense. They have an efficient offense. Jackson Dart, Parrish. Trey Harris closing in on 1,000 yards through 8 games, lighting things up. For Arkansas, they have Green, Jackins, Armstrong. There's playmakers on both sides here. Watch Arkansas. They could pull the upset here, but I have Ole Miss winning this one on the road in a close game, 28-20. This next game here is one you have to watch because this is practically a 50-50 game. It could go either way on Fox Sports at 12 p.m. 5-3 Minnesota. If they win this game, they could potentially find themselves ranked. They'll be playing number 24, the Fighting Illini, who sit at 6-2, but it's actually Minnesota who is the favorite here. They have a 54.3% chance to win this game. They are 3-point favorites. The over-under in this matchup is 45.5. This is 2 very similar teams. They both throw, they both run, they both play solid physical defense. This is going to be Fleck versus Belema. Who's going to dominate the line of scrimmage? Both teams want to set their foundation on the line. For Minnesota, they are led by Brosmer, closing in on 1,800 yards, 12 touchdowns, 4 picks. And for the Fighting Illini, they have Altmaier, closing in on 1,700 yards, 15 touchdowns, 3 picks. Very similar quarterback play here. So the difference could come down to who dominates in the run game and on the line of scrimmage. For Minnesota, they're averaging 27.9. The Fighting Illini, they average 27. For Minnesota, they throw for 239.6. The Fighting Illini throw for 231. Minnesota runs for 108. The Fighting Illini run for 144.5. That could be the difference maker here is the run game. But Minnesota's defense is actually a top 15 defense. They're only giving up 16.8 points a game. That is elite play there. And for Illinois, they're giving up 20.6, which is still top 25. This game is going to be a close one. Minnesota is the favorite team versus the ranked team, but I have Illinois winning this one really close. Fourth quarter, they get a late rushing touchdown, and that pulls them ahead. They win it 23-17. But it's going to be close. Could go either way. Next is the largest cocktail party in the world on ABC at 3:30 p.m. 4-3 Florida Gators, who've been playing pretty solid football the last month. They'll be playing number 2 Georgia Bulldogs 6-1. The Georgia Bulldogs have a 79.8% chance to win this game. 17-point favorites here. The over-under is 52.5. For Florida, obviously Graham Mertz out for the season. They've been going with freshman DJ Lagway. He's closing in on 1,100 yards, 5 touchdowns, 5 picks. Has played really good the last 2 games, but he's a true freshman playing the Georgia Bulldogs defense. Kirby Smart is going to throw a lot at him to try to confuse him. try to force him into some turnovers, and he's going to have some pressure in his face. So he's going to have to step up, have a great performance this game. He'll be playing Carson Beck, closing in on 2,000 yards, 15 touchdowns, 8 picks. Carson Beck's not having the season a lot of people thought he was going to have, but they're still winning. They're still 6-1. Right now, Florida, they average 30.9. They throw for 274.3, run for 149.7, and their defense playing a lot better than they were playing last year. They're only giving up 23.6 points per game. And for Georgia, they're averaging 33 points a game. That's not elite level play on the offensive side, but it's still good enough to get you to the playoffs. But they need to get that number up, especially in the run game. They're throwing for 304.9, running for 130.3. They have to get the run game going. They need better play out of the offensive line to open up some holes. They're too pass heavy, and they've had a lot of turnovers, a lot of picks this season. Carson Beck's had some pretty shaky performances. Their defense is giving up 16.9. That's really good. That's still top 20 in the nation, but Georgia's used to being sub 12. It's still really good, but Georgia fans have gotten really picky. They want that number lower. Looking at Florida, they have Lagway, they have Johnson Jr., they have Badger. Georgia has Beck, they have Etienne at the running back position, who, yes, he had a great game versus Texas, but outside of that, they've really done nothing on the ground. They need a 1,000-yard back. They need to get back to that Georgia O-line running back play, and they have Smith at wide receiver. I have Georgia winning this one, dominating the game, but Florida's probably going to get some second-half scores, but Georgia wins it 34-17. Now it's time for some Big 12 on Big 12 play. On ESPN at 3:30, we have 5-3 Texas Tech. You don't want to sleep on the Red Raiders here. They can move. They give up a lot of points, but if they have a hot game offensively, they can match you blow for blow with anyone. They'll be playing undefeated number 11 Iowa State, who's had a couple shaky games recently, but they're still going to dominate on the defensive side. They are undefeated 7-0. They have a 81.5% chance to win this game. 14.5-point favorites. The over-under here is 56.5. Texas Tech, they can score. Morton lighting things up, closing in on 2,100 yards, 17 touchdowns, 3 picks. Becht for Iowa State, closing in on 1,800 yards, 11 touchdowns, 5 picks. Campbell's team, we know they're going to be physical. We know they're going to be disciplined. They're going to dominate the line of scrimmage and especially the defensive line. How does Texas Tech hold up versus an aggressive defensive line? Right now, Texas Tech, they average 38.1. They throw for 298.4, run for 168.9, but it's that defense giving up 36 points a game. That is atrocious. 316 through the air, 158 on the ground. You can beat them passing and running the ball. Something has to give here. They need to shut down some drives and make sure they score. For Iowa State, they average 31.7, but they're only giving up 14.4 points per game, only 141 passing yards. Texas Tech loves to throw the ball, but Iowa State's going to dare you to try to throw on their secondary under pressure from their defensive line. And for playmakers, we have Morton, Taj Brooks, a top 5 running back in the country, closing in on 1,000 yards. And Texas Tech is Josh Kelly. And for Iowa State, they have Becht, they have Hansen, they have Noel. I have Iowa State winning this one in a closer one than a lot of people think. They win it 33-24. Now our match some Big Ten on Big Ten football, 3:30 p.m. on Peacock. Number 13, Indiana, 8-0. Still waiting to get some respect from people. They'll be playing 4-4 Michigan State. New coach, Jonathan Smith, new scheme, but they are getting better, more competitive every week. Right now, Indiana, 83.4% chance to win this game. 8-point favorites, over-under 51.5. The big question is, will Rourke be back at the quarterback position? Jackson is filled in just fine. He's been lighting things up. He can run, he can throw. But obviously, Rourke takes this offense to another level. They have the number 2 offense in the country, just slightly behind Miami. Props to Cignetti. This team is lighting it up and down the field on both sides of the ball, offense and defense. They're averaging 46.5. Rourke closing on 2,000 yards, 15 touchdowns, 3 picks. They throw for 292.5. They run for 200.6. Even if you shut down Jackson and the passing game, potentially, they'll just line up. They'll just run it down your throat. And their defense giving up 14.1 points per game. Top 10 defense in the nation. And for Michigan State, they have Childs. He's a 5-star guy. He's playing better recently, but still a lot of turnovers. He's closing in on 700 yards, 7 touchdowns, 9 picks. They average 21. That's not good enough to compete with a high-flying offense like Indiana, and they are only giving up 21.3 points a game. They have a solid defense, but they're definitely going to be tested by the multiple Indiana offense. I have Indiana cruising here. They have Rourke, they have Ellison, they have Surratt. They should be able to throw and run the ball at will. They win this one 30-17. But if we get more word on if Rourke is playing, I do expect that spread to move up. And then at 3:30 p.m. on Fox, we have number 17, Kansas State, 7-1. Everything is still in front of them for the Big 12. They only have one loss to BYU. Outside of that, undefeated in the conference. They have to continue to win out, and they could potentially find themselves in the Big 12 championship. They'll be playing 3-5 Houston. Right now, they have an 84.4% chance to win this game. 12.5-point favorites. The over-under here is 46.5. They have Avery Johnson playing at a high level right now, passing the ball. We know he's a mobile quarterback. When he runs with great purpose, picks up massive yardage on the ground. But his passing game has actually looked really good in the last 2 to 3 weeks. Right now, he's closing in on 1,700 yards, 16 touchdowns, 5 picks. The highest recruited player in Kansas State history. Smith on the other side, 4 touchdowns, 8 picks. They gotta cut down on the turnovers. They're having issues moving the ball, passing and running the ball, and they cannot score. They're only averaging 14.1 points a game. That's bottom 5 in all of college football. For Kansas State, they're averaging 32.8. They throw for 221. They run for 223. They're only giving up 21.4 points a game. Houston has a pretty stifling defense, but it's going to be hard to compete with the multiple Kansas State offense. Kansas State does give up just shy of 270 passing yards. If you beat them, it's going to be vertically through the air, but it is hard to run on Kansas State. They're only giving up 96.8 on the ground. They have A.J. Johnson. They have DJ Giddens closing in on 1,000 yards, a top 10 running back. And they have Brown at wide receiver, who's a massive playmaker. When they need the big catch, they look for him. I have Kansas State cruising here, winning this one 34-17. And another big in-conference game on CBS at 3:30. Number 1 Oregon Ducks 8-0 after their performance last weekend. They have definitely solidified themselves as the number 1 team. They'll be playing 5-3 Michigan. The Ducks have a 77.8% chance to win this game. 14.5-point favorites. The over-under here is 45.5. The Ducks are led by Dylan Gabriel. He was the preseason Heisman frontrunner. Dropped out. They had a pretty sloppy first 2 to 3 games. They've interjected themselves right back in. He's right back in the top 3 right now. He's closing in on 2,400 yards, 18 touchdowns, 5 picks. But it's also his ability to use his legs that takes this Oregon offense to another level. And for Michigan, who knows who their quarterback is? They've had 3 guys cycling in there, Warren, Orji, Huddle. Really doesn't matter who they roll out at the quarterback position. They cannot move the ball, cannot get first downs. One of the worst offenses in the nation. We expect more out of Michigan. They have to figure out something. If you have 3 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. Thankfully for them, they can still run the ball, but gosh, they cannot throw the ball. Right now, the Ducks, they average 35 a game. They throw for 310.6. They run for 167.1. They're only giving up 15.6 points a game. This is an elite team, the number 5 overall roster according to ESPN. Top 10 offense, top 10 defense. Very talented team under Dan Lanning. For Michigan, they're averaging 21.5. They only throw for 140. They do run for 172. Still have a good defense, not as good as a lot of people thought, but they're only giving up 21.5 points a game. For the Ducks, they have Gabriel, they have James, Johnson, Stewart. Michigan, look for Edwards, look for Mullings. They're going to try to run downhill at you, but that's easier said than done. Oregon, they're built on the lines of scrimmage. This isn't your typical Pac-12 team. They can line up with you. They can beat you on the offensive and the defensive lines, and they're deeper on the line than Michigan is. It is what it is. I have the Ducks winning this one 33-16. Welcome to the top 10, the Aggies. The next game, 7:30 on ABC. Number 10, Texas A&M, 7-1. That lone loss to Notre Dame. Every time they win, they push Notre Dame higher. They'll be playing the 4-3 South Carolina Gamecocks. Shane Beamer's feeling a lot of heat, but one thing you don't want to do is underestimate the Gamecocks. They are known for upsetting top 10 teams. It's just kind of what they do. You're going to their home. They're going to be competitive. They're going to be coached up for this game to get an upset. Right now, the Aggies have a 54% chance to win this game. 2.5-point favorites. The over-under here is 44.5. The Aggies, the biggest issue, the biggest question we have is who's going to start the game? Is it going to be Connor Wegman? Is it going to be Reed? Wegman is kind of Jekyll and Hyde. He has a great game, beats a ranked team. Next week versus some unranked foe, he looks awful, throws a bunch of picks. Or Reed comes in, saves the day this past week. They're probably going to go with Reed, but we don't necessarily know as of yet. So that's kind of a major question mark, is who's going to play, and if they do play, what version of themselves do we get? Right now, the leading passers, Reed, 655 yards, 6 touchdowns, 0 picks. One thing that he does is he's also a mobile quarterback, so he does open up the run game for the Gamecocks. They're led by Sellers, 1,000 yards, 5 touchdowns, 4 picks. The Aggies average 32.3. This is a Mike Elko team. They run downhill, they play defense, and they are disciplined. They have a top 10 roster. Very, very talented team. Took them a couple weeks to get that running game going, but it is cruising right now. They throw for 188. They run for 221.5 and an elite defense giving up 18.4. But the Gamecocks are averaging 28.6. They're only giving up 18.7 points as well. They can match you defensively. Both teams want to play at the line of scrimmage. Both teams look to shut down the run game first, force you to have to beat them vertically through the air. How does that fare for the Aggies, who are a run-heavy team, but the Gamecocks are going to try to shut that down? But the Gamecocks do have a lot of turnovers. That could give the Aggies the short field. They have Moss closing in on 800 yards on the ground, and they have Thomas. And for the Gamecocks, they have Sanders, and they have Bennett Jr. I have the Aggies winning a close one here. The South Carolina Gamecocks are always upset-minded. I have them almost pulling it off, but not able to finish it. The Aggies win it 27-23. And this next matchup is an ACC game with major implications. Clemson wants to keep that undefeated conference record at 7:30 on ESPN. 5-3 Louisville, who's potentially just outside of the top 25. They want to win this game, get themselves back in that top 25. They'll be playing number 11 Clemson, 6-1, that only lost to the Georgia Bulldogs. Right now, Clemson has a 66.9% chance to win this game. They are 10.5-point favorites, but Louisville, very talented team, very efficient multiple offense, and they play decent defense sometimes. Right now, they are led by Tyler Show, closing in on 2,400 yards, 20 touchdowns, 5 picks. They love to throw the ball, but Clemson's right there with them. Klubnik, year 2 under Riley, has taken massive strides forward. He's not just pushing the ball vertically down the field to his weapons down the field. He's also mobile, running the ball, scrambling. He's closing in on 1,900 yards, 20 touchdowns, only 3 picks so far. Right now, Louisville, they average 36.6 per game. They throw for 316.3. They run for 157, and they're giving up 24.6 points a game. Clemson has the number 7 overall roster. They're averaging 42 points a game. That's a top 15 offense. They throw for 295.9. They run for 199.9. Very balanced offense, 500 yards of offense every game. It's going to be hard for Louisville to shut this down, but this game could turn into a shootout. Clemson's giving up 23 points a game. They have a top 10 defense talent-wise. That hasn't necessarily translated statistically on the field, just because the second and third string is not playing at the level of the first string. But still, they're going to get after it. They're going to hit Tyler Show a lot. He's going to have to step up massively in this game for Louisville to have a chance. And they have playmakers, though. They have Brown. They have the transfer Brooks. They can run it. They can throw it. Clemson, they have Klubnik, Maffa, Williams. I have Clemson winning a shootout first half, but dominating the second half, and they win it 38-28. And then at 7:45 on the SEC Network, 3-5 Kentucky. They've completely fallen apart. They have virtually no offense right now. They'll be playing number 7 Tennessee, 6-1. Tennessee has no offense in the SEC. They have a great offense, but they haven't scored over 24 points in 5 straight games. Basically, once conference play started, they've not been able to score over 24 points. But you know it's bound to happen at some point if they have Josh Heupel, one of the best offensive minds in all of college football. Is this the game they end that streak and they light things up on the offensive side? For Kentucky, they are led by Brock Vandagriff. He's closing in on 1,300 yards, 6 touchdowns, 5 picks. They just can't push the ball down the field. Right now, Tennessee major favorites, 16.5-point favorite. Over-unders 45.5, and they have a 91% chance to win this game. They are led by Nico, closing in on 1,500 yards, 8 touchdowns, 4 picks. He's a young quarterback, has not shown his promise since SEC play began. He was lighting it up those first games, but once he starts getting pressured, he starts making mistakes, starts overthrowing targets. Can they calm him down this game? They have a running game to help him out. There's no reason to be that panicky. They have a top 10 defense. and they can run the ball. You don't need to make the deep bomb passes. Kentucky, they're averaging 19.1, throwing for 187, running for 142. Great defensive play. This is a Mark Stoops team. They're going to be disciplined. They're going to have a great defensive line. They're only giving up 19.9 points a game. Tennessee, they're still averaging 39.6 per game, throwing for 242, running for 241.6, a top 15 rushing team in the nation. Very balanced offense. Do not underestimate their offensive potential. And they're only giving up 11.6 points a game. Top 10 in defense, top 10 in hurries, top 10 in quarterback sacks. They're going to get after Kentucky. They will force Kentucky into mistakes. Tennessee has elite playmakers. Nico, Sampson, Thornton Jr., Squirrel White. They have the better weapons. I have Tennessee actually cruising here, winning this game pretty decently, winning it 34-17 and still covering that large SEC spread. And our final game is actually one of the best games of the weekend, a ranked-on-ranked matchup at 8 p.m. on the ACC network. Number 8, undefeated Pitt, 7-0. They are undefeated in the ACC. They want some respect. Their first step is to win this game. They'll be playing SMU, who's 7-1, coming off of that extremely close win versus Duke. Right now, SMU, 70.1% chance to win this game. They are 7.5-point favorites. The over-under, 59.5. There's going to be points scored here. Both teams have top 25 offenses. For Pitt, they changed offensive schemes, and they have been lighting up. They have Holstein, the transfer from Alabama. Narduzzi has a talented team here. He is a defensively focused guy. They don't have the best defense, but you know in specific games that defense will show up. Maybe this is the game. Holstein through the air, closing in on 1,900 yards, 17 touchdowns, 5 picks. Jennings has stepped in for Stone for SMU. They've been lighting it up. He was banged up this past week. As long as he's healthy, this game is going to be a shootout. Could come down to the final possession. Whoever has the ball last could win this game. Jennings closing in on 1,600 yards, 10 touchdowns, 5 picks. He also loves to run the ball, and he racks up massive yardage when he takes off. For Pitt, they average 40.9. They throw for 297.7. They run for 160.9. And their defense giving up 22 points a game, only 94 on the ground. For SMU, they average 39.1. They throw for 249.5. They run for 201. They're only giving up 21.4, only 88.4 on the ground. This is going to be a fun game to watch. If you are up at this time, make sure to watch this game. It's going to be nonstop points, great quarterback play. Which defense shows up the best prepared? For Pitt, they have Holstein, Reed, Mumfield. For SMU, they have Jennings, Brashard Smith, Maryland. The better run game to me rests with SMU, but I think Pitt might squeak this one out. I have Pitt pulling the upset here. I have them staying undefeated still, winning this one 34-31, getting the upset win, potentially making a massive step in the top 25 if they get to 8-0. But this game could come down to that final possession. Who has the final possession? That's the major question here. That's our breakdown. That's our predictions for all of our Week 10 top 25 matchups. We'll have our non-top 25s coming out tomorrow. Make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe. If you have any comments about these games or anything else, drop them below, and I will respond. Thank you.